is Wednesday. RawMikeRichards.com, broadcasting live from the DKI studios in downtown Toronto, 234 King Street East out of the Pacific Junction Hotel. Coming up this morning, these tribute videos to other players that come to other buildings, enough already. It's stupid. And it got really dumb in Boston. And you know what? A tip of the hat goes to Isaiah Thomas, who said the same thing, even though they wanted to put one of his pregame videos in front of a Celtics game and share it with Paul Pierce. I'll have more on that, but that's just ridiculous. The Leafs. Gee, I thought that was putting it in the win column.
Should have been.
Roast beef, what happened there? That's got to be upsetting. We'll talk about that. And is Marner, is he the... Now, you used to say GOAT. But you say GOAT now, they're like, what do you mean GOAT? Greatest of all time? You being sarcastic?
I know.
No, it used to be, with the horns, but, don't worry about it.
Yeah, same thing with a dangle. Dangle was never a stick
handling
move.
No.
A dangle was speed.
Yeah, but even in some of the other terms like bar down. I never said that as
I don't even like it when certain commentators, you get a lot of American ones talking about the half wall.
The half wall.
There's no wall on an NHL rink.
And by the way, I'm never saying wrister. Never. It's a wrist shot. It's a wrist shot. Here's the wrister from the half wall, bar down. What game are you talking about? What is that? Also, we've got in the upsetting world of sports, in the wild and the wacky, that's I guess what Marv Albert used to say, the wild and the wacky. We've got midget Muay Thai boxing. We've got a guy who is possibly the worst boxing debut of all time. I can't stay away from that stuff. It is people go, I don't think you should be doing that. I think it's wrong. Oh, by the way, Showdown Joe, I saw your comment on that. Oh, he shouldn't. That's very unfair to that little person. He looks like he was really hurt. Excuse me, did your wife put that on Twitter? Yeah. Oh, I'm talking to you. Makakatsofai. Fratello, what's going on in your house? Why are you talking like that?
Said the UFC commentator, eh?
Yeah. I think the other fellow is pushing down the other fellow. Pushing him down?
I can't stand for that. But here's John Bones Jones delivering 17 consecutive elbows to the skull of Matt Hughes.
Yeah.
Let's roll.
And now back to the action. Well, it's a little ground and pound action. I think that's unfair to the other fellow's skull. Oh, it's unfair, all right. And I guess we could talk about John Bones Jones. So once he, I don't know, isn't running people over or all the other stuff that he gets himself into trouble with. What a disaster. What a disaster for a guy who's
had everything.
It was like a killing machine, Dave.
Yep.
I don't know if he ever would have lost, to be honest.
Well,
no, he has, but a guy like that, just maybe a little bit of focus.
Yeah, just the tad.
Yeah. You know what? I got some news for you. You may have made some money at this. Yeah. What an idiot. I mean, that's why I look at a person and go, you're a moron. You are not an intelligent human being. Also, we'll take a look at, what else did I have come? Oh, roller derby. I know what you're saying. Mike, I hear all the, you're talking Leafs, you're talking about the NBA, the association, you're going to talk about Houston and what's happening with the Clippers after that melee, the suspensions. But what about roller derby? Oh, I've got an awesome one today.
You got a lot of people telling you that?
Yeah, Paul the Bear Rupert, remember that? Skinny Minnie Miller, and then the blonde girl that was supposed to be the pretty one. Remember, it was roller derby, so
supposed to be.
So way pretty. What the hell was her name? Someone else is going to know. If you're watching today, you can chime in.
You ever watched the roller derby? It was on Saturdays.
It was Saturday morning, and I remember it said Skinny Minnie Miller was the one I remembered all the time. But you're going to see someone called Little Richard, and a surprise appearance by Little Leroy.
Oh, Little Leroy.
You can't make this up.
No.
You can't make this up. Where are we going to start? Well, let's start with the Leafs.
The Toronto Maple Leafs.
The Toronto Maple. Oh, by the way, also before we get our guest today, Graham McLaughlin, who wrote a book based on it's a relationship that he had. It's probably like a great grandfather. We'll find out more about that.
Yep.
But J.P. Bickle, the life, the Leafs, and the legacy. There'd be a lot of people who wouldn't even know that name, J.P. Bickle. But,
Exactly.
you know, and it's an interesting story. Our good buddy Kevin Shea was also a part of this book. And Kevin, in his own right, is just an outstanding individual. I got a lot of time for Kevin. And I think he actually might be coming in.
Yep. We're going to try to organize that Kevin in studio next week, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. Also, James Myrtle's in next week as well. I'm not sure if it's going to be studio or phone, but either way, the managing editor of The Athletic here in Toronto, the bigwig, will be joining us.
Good.
Next week.
And there's always there always seems to be this feeling of with the advent of The Athletic, people firing all over the place, making all these comments about it, and that's why I like James. It's the reason I like it, because he's going to say it kind of like it how it is, and there's some people who don't like that. We on Realm Like Richards love that, so he'll be on. And you said the guru, the Zen master of the molded mask.
Yes.
Greg Harrison is going to come in studio.
Yep.
Sometime in February.
So
bring the masks.
So what has happened is, I guess Greg's doing a lot of traveling, and he's actually starting to get more contract work with some masks. So he's kind of in between moves right now, and he says a lot of his stuff is in storage. So I said, okay, well, listen, let's think of a date after the Super Bowl that works, where you'll actually have some masks with you, because we are also on the video side of things. And he says, you know what, great idea. Let's keep contact, blah, blah, blah. It was funny because I talked to him in November. We traded off messages in early December. And then, you know, our Christmas break comes, and, you know, you kind of lose touch a little bit. I phoned him up yesterday in the car, and the first thing he says to me is, "Hey, Dave, Happy New Year. I haven't talked to you in a while." So he knew he had my number in his phone. So he was ready for the call that it was eventually going to happen. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this. If you thought guys like Chris Creamer with the hockey logos, and we've talked about goal equipment before, and you know how I like that and you like that.
Totally.
Well, we're bringing in the godfather of the goalie masks of the 70s and 80s, and I can't wait. This is going to be fantastic.
Yeah, this will be great, so we'll let you know when that's going to happen. Last night, the Maple Leafs, they lose one they probably thought that they had, and there's enough blame to go around. You know, do you individually point out a Mitch Marner? Certainly for Coach Babcock, he wasn't shy about it in the post-game. He said, you know, if you cheat for offense, you're going to lose. Generally, I think Dave, when you're talking hockey, especially for young guys, the attempt, or sometimes it's like defensemen with the bad pinch.
Yes.
You know, because they're trying to get that advantage by doing it. But it is always risk-reward. Whenever you're thinking of those situations, it's risk-reward. And was the risk worth the reward you're going to get? Well, it's overtime. You score a goal, it's all over. You know, you can even look at Willie Nylander in that breakaway, but it wasn't a clean breakaway. And it certainly wasn't like it used to be in the old days. Dave, a guy would be ahead of you, and you come behind him, you give him one of these. Sometimes one of these.
Oh, yeah.
A one hand on the stick. Yeah.
Chop on the back of the shin pads. Yeah.
And as I'm watching, the goalie coming in, I'm going, come on, Dave. Like it looked like a meeting with Harvey Weinstein.
Yep.
Like it was difficult to get away from guys. And now that as soon as you put that one, you have one
with
hand.
Harvey Weinstein.
Yeah, you got that one. So a little bit different, but I'm not blaming Willie. I mean, you know, if you start looking at individual moments in a tight game like that, I get why someone might look at Marner, but it's the whole body of work that the coaching staff is going to look at. And I'm just curious, Dave, your take. No one is ever going to talk about Mike Babcock in certainly a derogatory way.
Oh, I will.
Okay, well, let's bring on some darker music.
Well, here's what Here's what I'm really getting tired of. The treatment of the younger players on this team. I understand that you have to keep a little bit of law and order with some of your new players, but guess what? Your Mitch Marners, your William Nylanders, your Austin Matthews, guys like that, that's your future. That's the reason why you're going to have success. So ease off a little bit, considering that Nazem Kadri goes on this 1 month slump and not a peep was said about it, and no ice time was deducted, and he wasn't demoted to the fourth line, and he wasn't demoted to the wing, or he wasn't moved around. You know, everything's fine with that. But, you know, Mitch Marner screws up, and he has from time to time. This is going to happen. William Nylander juggles through this lineup, which is incredible. I just don't understand about that. And also ice time jurisdictions. Leo Komarov had more time on the ice than Austin Matthews. In what universe does Leo Komarov deserve more ice time than a top 5 player in the world? The Leo Komarov isn't going to be on this roster next year, but you reward that guy with more ice time. And I know it was only a matter of seconds, but guess what? Leo Komarov should be playing 5-6 minutes less than Austin Matthews. And Austin Matthews is the guy you should be playing in the overtime and maybe keep him on the ice for the entire 5 minutes. Like, I don't get some of the reasonings behind what he does, but you're smarter than I am. So, but from a fan's point of view, from a guy that's covered this team, covered this league for a while, I'm just kind of questioning that sort of side of it, and I don't really get it.
Do you agree with Dave? It's another show.
It's another show. Wow.
Let us know. This will go out today.
We got a lot of them, too.
Agree or disagree with Dave Bastel.
Got the good music too. Well, let's get to our first agree or disagree with Russell Graham.
Okay, and now to the lesser part of this show.
Yep. But really cool music though.
Yeah, it's the Russ music, and the Russ Cam will be coming on. And do you agree with disagree with Dave Bastel just said?
There we go.
There we go.
I agree 100%. I have liked Leo Komarov since he became a Leaf. I still don't mind him for his defensive ability. Has not been able to score at all this year and does not deserve to be playing more than Austin Matthews. It frustrates me. I think Matthews, realistically, I know he's still young. I think realistically he should be getting 21 to 22 minutes a night that most top centers in the league get on a nightly basis. I thought he had a pretty decent game last night. He looked tired at some points, but for the most part, he looked pretty good in the game. And why not play your best player the most? That gives you the best chance to win.
You know what I think is interesting and good points, roast beef. Years ago, and we're going back a little ways, but Jacques Lemaire is coaching Minnesota.
Yes.
And people were losing their minds at that time with the way they felt that he was treating Marian Gaborik. Gaborik wasn't seeing a lot of ice time. I don't even know at one point if he was on the power play. And Jacques Lemaire's position was that he felt that in his progression of understanding the pro game and just where, that fit was, that for what people were asking for, the coach felt that he wasn't ready for it. That's, it's a little 50-50, and you look at the Gaborik, but I'd have to say, if I'm looking at Austin Matthews, if we're making the comparison of the more talented player of that time, was Marian Gaborik a more talented player in that league compared to the rest of the players than Austin Matthews is now in 2018 compared to the rest of the players?
No, because you're looking at Austin Matthews as this will be a generational player. Like when we're in our 80s and 90s, if we're still around at that time.
Oh, we're being around. I'm not going anywhere. Never going to die.
We're going to be arguably, and I know this is tough to say exactly, we may be having the conversation if the health is there, if everything falls into order like it appears to be, as Austin Matthews as the greatest Maple Leaf in the history of the organization. That might be a realistic, when Rusty's 30. Okay, that's not a little bit older than 30. We may be having that kind of conversation. I'm referring to how young he is. It's a compliment. Going back to Matthews for a second, he's played over 20 minutes once in the last 6 weeks. I'm just looking at his game charts, and there's some games where he's sitting there at 16:46, 17:37, 17:11, 18:42. He's played once over 20 minutes, and that time was 20 minutes and 17 seconds, the home game against the Vancouver Canucks back on January the 6th. You want to compare your Crosbys, your McDavids, because that's the conversation you're having, your Johnny Gaudreaus, guys like that. That's the kind of conversation you should be having when you're matching up ice time. Winnipeg Jets, when Mark Scheifele's not hurt, or Blake Wheeler, who's playing that top line spot, 23 to 24 minutes minimum. And he's playing on the power play. Where the hell is Austin Matthews' power play time?
Yeah,
Why isn't he the first guy over the bench no matter what? Play him. He's a horse. Ride the horse. If you're going to win the Derby, you ride the horse properly. They're not doing it properly right now, unless there is something physically wrong. And he's being careful with them. And if there is, what the hell is he doing on the ice?
Well, Dave, he's the type of player that at some point, the way that you describe him, we would assume when young roast beef is not young and maybe he's 40 or 50, that they bring on Austin Matthews after an unbelievable career. Maybe he was a lifelong Leaf, which you don't see that. Maybe there was a championship. I mean,
sure,
imagine that.
Yeah.
So I would expect at some point, then you would have a video tribute because of the massive body of work that Austin Matthews has done.
Maybe a couple, yeah.
Let's go back now to, now, allow myself to introduce myself. So Paul Pierce, they figured that on February the 11th that they would have his video tribute. Paul Pierce spent, 15 seasons? 15 seasons with the Boston Celtics. In that time, he was an all-star. I don't know, like 10 times. He was they went to the conference finals twice. They win the championship in 2008. He was a substantial part of the fabric of Celtic basketball, probably a fabric of the city. I'm not saying he's one of the Mount Rushmore guys in Boston. I'm just saying it was a player of substance. So if you're telling me on February the 11th that before the game they're going to have a tribute to Paul Pierce, the Celtics also say, well, we're also going to do an Isaiah Thomas tribute when he comes back because it's Cleveland, so we're going to do that. Are you serious? He played for 3 years. They went to a conference final and didn't win. It's not to take away from what Isaiah Thomas is, because his story, remember, he lost his sister.
Yep.
He went on. Dave,
he played through it too.
His performance was like Hollywood great.
Yes.
But in this period of time where, does every traded player that got to a certain level of popularity deserve a video tribute? And here's where I have a lot of time for Isaiah Thomas for what he said. So he came out realizing, what was planned and what Danny Ainge did, and he said, this is on Twitter, "I'd like to thank the Celtics for their gracious offer to play a video tribute on February the 11th, celebrating my 3 years in Boston. But since it appears that this caused some controversy with Paul Pierce tonight, I'd ask the Celtics instead to focus all of their attention on 34's career."
Yep.
Well done.
There you go.
Well done.
Yep.
This is the day and age, by the way, where everyone gets a trophy. Everybody wins. Everybody's special. And that's what this reeks of, Dave. Because Isaiah Thomas, as great as a story it was, and albeit almost briefly when you're talking 3 years, to jam it in because you feel that it's necessary that he gets one, even the guy himself says, don't, I'm embarrassed. Don't do that. I'm telling you, these video things, it should be like, what does it take for a player on a team, if he's traded and comes back, or he's retired, what does it take for him to get a retired number, a big video, presentation before a game? Like, what kinds of things does it take? I'm saying usually it's championship, but even if it's not, it's got to be, 10, like it can't be 5 even. It's got to be like a 10-year career.
Sure.
where you were the pillar of that organization. Maybe you also did stuff in the community. It's got to be of substance, because 3 years just ain't cutting it. And that's embarrassing they even tried. I'm embarrassed that they even attempted this.
Yep, I totally agree. And you're kind of getting way out of hand with some of these tributes as far as, the player has a cup of coffee and,
Did Alex Steen get one last night?
No, he didn't.
Before the game? Okay,
No.
well, okay, then I don't know what I'm talking about then.
But
Does Matt Stajan get one when he comes back?
he should. That's a good example. John Mitchell. Here's John Mitchell tribute night. Peter Holland, when the Rangers come through now, Peter Holland night. I love it.
Paul Mitchell. I don't. Born in Regina, 19. Oh, come on. Seriously? Okay. Well, look.
It's fun. It's funny you say that because when I've been at Leaf games, they hand out the jersey to the Army veteran or somebody that served overseas, which is fantastic, right? And they've had different names for it, like Loop's Troops with Joffrey Loophole. Luke Shen had Luke's whatever it was,
Luke's Goofs.
It may have been.
I don't think it was that.
But speaking of video tributes, right? Luke Shen when the Coyotes come through. But some of the alumni that the Leafs have mustered out, hand out jerseys.
Yeah. And then sometimes.
And here's Ian White.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's another thing too.
Put your fingers together for Jeff Finger.
We'll get Doug Gilmore back in studio, and he can talk about his big night and what he received. Because I'm telling you, this story is gold. It's the way that the Leafs used to be. The Shanahan plan, the guys with Lou. I mean, just what they have done within the organization, MLSE. You cannot compare this current management and ownership to any other time in the history of the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's why I think today is going to be so interested when we talk to Graham McLaughlin. Is going to talk about a time, and I'm sure he's going to be very informative about just how it used to be. And I'm saying going back to like 1924, but his, and I want to say great grandfather, we'll find out. But J.P. Bickle, there's a memorial award. He was the president, chairman, and the director, the owner from 1924 to 1951. So we'll ask him, in his history of watching Leaf ownership and organization, just how different this is now, which I think will be interesting. And speaking of making things better, this is what we try to do on this show. This is what I try to do for you, the people, to lighten your day, to make it more informative and entertaining, which is why today...
Oh, no.
And maybe Mike Babcock needs to, how they have these bonding sessions?
Oh, yeah.
Maybe they need to watch Muay Thai. Because Muay Thai is wow, it's one of the tougher sports, I got to admit. It
is, yeah.
Mike Miles, I got a chance to train with him in Calgary. But maybe this isn't the Muay Thai that you want to see, but it is great. It is awesome. It's midget Muay Thai. Oh, this is so good. Watch. The crowd. Listen to the crowd when they make a contact. Listen to the crowd. Oh, jeez. That is not Hervé Villachez, by the way. No, it's not. Hey. Ooh. We'll have to ask Showdown Joe about this one.
We'll tag him on this video.
You know what John Bones Jones would do to these guys? They get the monkey mascot kick, I can tell you that. Look at this. Oh. Oh, wow. Kicking when he's down. Wow, this is, oh.
Good music in the background.
Yeah. Oh, and it goes, by the way, you watch Muay Thai, it starts from the very beginning and never stops.
Somebody's signed a Charma Cobra in the background.
Would you not pay to see this? And for everyone watching here, I can't keep my eyes off this stuff. Mike Babcock's showing the team this. Can you imagine the look on their faces? This is awesome. I would pay a lot of money to sit in the front row.
You think they should bring this into the dressing room?
Oh, absolutely. And the crowd, you got to hand it to them. Great cheering. Great. I think this fight,
There's a
by the
Mitch
way,
Marner
look
joke.
at that kick.
There's a Mitch Marner joke in here somewhere, but I'm not going to say it.
He pushes him when the ring is over. All right, there you go. That's and by the way,
Oi!
You're welcome. You are welcome. Coming up in a couple of minutes here, we're going to talk once again to Graham McLaughlin, who resides, I believe, in Calgary.
Yes, he does.
Writing this book about the Leafs, and I'm going to tell you. So it's Conn Smythe. A lot of the history that people don't know, and I'll be honest, there's a lot of people in the city when they found out that it was going to be a Loblaws.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been down there and what they have,
it's a nice setup.
Like that's a Ryerson facility now, and I think is it Mattamy?
Yeah, the Mattamy Athletic Center. and it shares the building with the Loblaws.
Because the Loblaws is cool. The Loblaws
Loblaws is really nice. Yeah.
And people thought, well,
I mean, bring your wallet though. Don't forget your
Yeah.
wallet, because that slice of bread's going to cost you about $4 more.
See, now-
I'm just saying.
now we go back to Dave's point of interest.
I'm just saying. And the dessert area, the bakery and the fantastic.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Look at Russell's face there.
It is good. It is very good.
It looks like the greatest spread of pastries you've ever seen.
It's like Willy Wonka's factory.
It is. Yeah.
Like, it really is weird.
It's awesome.
And in the LCBO right upstairs,
come on.
too, they just
Come on.
they have everything.
Seriously.
Yep.
And then the facility itself now holds what? How many 5,000?
The hockey arena, which is on the 3rd floor, holds, I think, close to 3,000.
Oh, I thought it was a little bigger than that.
I think you could pack more in if you really wanted to. I think for a general like Rams hockey game, the most would be about 3,000. And then the basketball court, which is on the 2nd floor, can hold about 1,500.
Good basketball program too.
Cram into 2,000.
Because when they had the what was it,
the Final Four,
the Can-Am, one of the Can games? I don't know.
That's good. Let's go with that one.
I never went.
You never, right?
As soon as I saw what they did with the highway, I said, out of here.
See ya.
Out. Pan Am Games, is that what it was?
Yeah.
The Pan Am Games were there, yeah.
Did you like it? Okay, look, that's stopping it because we'll stick with the garden story here. So we're going to talk, and hopefully come on Skype. You love us.
Yeah, because for the most part, this book was made mention of a guy named J.P. Bickle who basically did not he was kind of like the quiet guy in the background that had made everything happen. Everybody knows some of the names that have happened, but a lot of people don't know about him, and that's kind of what we're getting to today.
The companies in this city, by the way, who do almost every major demolition of some of the most historic buildings, really, that Canada has.
Yep.
Their company's name is Priestley. And is this from Priestley Demolition? Is that what they're calling this? It's remarkable what they do. And they did a little sort of brief video of the taking down and the change in the actual Maple Leaf Garden. So when we come back on the other side, we'll talk to author Graham McLaughlin. The book is called J.P. Bickle, The Life, the Leafs, and the Legacy. And speaking of legacy, here's the story of Maple Leaf Gardens.
There is a plot of land at the corner of Carleton and Church Street in Toronto, Canada, that has become hollowed. It's Maple Leaf Gardens, and it's hockey's temple. It was home to the Toronto Maple Leafs for 68 years and provided the setting for 11 of their Stanley Cups, the last coming in 1967. The Beatles made their Canadian debut at the Gardens, and Muhammad Ali had arguably the toughest fight of his career versus Canada's own George Shafalo, right here.
Outstanding.
Age caught up to the old girl, and in 1999, the lights faded for the last time. But this iconic landmark deserved the better fate than becoming rubble. The Gardens is no ordinary building, and it needed to be recognized as a place where great things happened. It deserved a rebirth. After years of debating ideas for its future, Loblaw Limited and Ryerson University teamed up to turn the Gardens into an urban grocery store and a phys ed facility, with the highlight being a hockey rink on the 3rd floor. The Maple Leaf Garden restoration and redevelopment project had finally been given the green light, and it was time to turn blueprints into reality. But Conn Limited became the general contractor, and its first order of business was hiring a demolition company that could handle a job that would require the utmost precision. Priestley Demolition was the clear answer for a job of this historic magnitude.
Maple Leaf Gardens definitely sort of special to me, because I came here watching hockey games when I was a kid with my dad. It's definitely got nostalgia to it. It's got history behind it. We did the demolition for the new Air Canada Centre. We took down the old post office, and now we've done this demolition, so it's kind of nice. I say to my son, we did both jobs or whatever. We bid the job back in the beginning of December 2009. Loblaw's been waiting to get a partner, which they've got now in Ryerson. I think their plan to move forward with this building has been well thought out at this point. Felt our company was probably the best suited for the project in the sense that we have our own cranes, we have our own equipment, we have our own people to do all this work. We have all the substructure you need to do a project like this. And obviously it's nice having a feather in your cap to say we did Maple Leaf Gardens safely. I think the hockey guys are sleeping in here. I was at the game last night. They just got Phaneuf and Jaguar and 3-0, so maybe tearing out the Gardens is going to help them win, eh?
With a job this big, you're going to need some help. Ryan hands over the reins to Superintendent and cousin, Brian Priestley.
Welcome to Maple Leaf Gardens. We're here to strip the building back so that Conn, the general contractor...
Graham McLaughlin.
Graham McLaughlin, it's Mike Richards calling from Raw. Mike Richards, how you doing this morning?
Good, and yourself, Mike?
I am doing very fine. Thanks so much for joining us here. By the way, we just saw a clip going into this interview from Priestley Demolition, those that I don't say refurbished, but they actually took down that historic building, put it back up, did the Mattamy Arena on one side and the Loblaws. Because I'll be honest, Graham, I think even people in Toronto aren't, as much as they know Conn Smythe, they're probably not really familiar with the true history of Maple Leaf Gardens and the Leafs itself. So your book, J.P. Bickle, The Life, the Leafs, and the Legacy, a lot of people here today might want to know, well, who is J.P. Bickle? And by the way, Graham, to you, what is the relation between you and J.P. Bickle?
Pardon me. Well, J.P. Bickle, he's my first cousin on my mother's side, so the P actually stands for Paris in his name, which was his mother's last name. That was my great-grandmother's last name, and we all originated from the Ottawa Valley. So the Parises and the McLaughlins used to farm beside each other near White Lake, Ontario. So that's the connection before we moved out to Saskatchewan and started farming in 1905.
So he was, from what I understand, so he's the owner, the president, the chairman, and the director of the Lease from 1924 to 51. That's a long reign. That really is.
Yeah, that's correct. Well, he had the money and the wherewithal and the foresight to put money into a number of Canadian institutions that still stand today, or stand in a different variation, maybe with a different name. But absolutely, he was the money for since 1924 with the Maple Leafs, and always took a backseat role because that's where he felt comfortable.
Now, he was the one who goes out because most people know the name Conn Smythe, and sometimes it's the house that Conn built and so on. So was was J.P. Bickle responsible for going out and bringing in Conn Smythe?
Yes, absolutely. He actually had hired, when he took over in the St. Pat's in 1924 as one of the owners, it was actually December 9th, 1924, when he became one of the owners with a friend of his. Charlie Query was in there, and Charlie is a very well-known name in the Toronto circles. He owned one of the movie theaters, and that's how J.P. Bickle knew him, from the movie theater business, because he owned a number of movie theaters as well. And some of the Hambley brothers wanted to get out with their money, and he asked J.P. Bickle if he'd invest in the St. Pat's at the time, and that's how J.P. Bickle initially got involved.
And it's interesting, Graham, and good morning. Thanks for joining us. It's interesting when you read the book itself, when Conn Smythe comes into the position he was in when J.P. Bickle hired him, that was JP's second choice, and a lot of people don't know that Smythe got that position after the guy that received the position prior to him kind of failed in that position and was kind of removed from it. That's a really interesting point in Maple Leaf history.
Yeah, that's correct, and I'd have to refer to the book to see what that gentleman's name, but he was actually one of the sports writers of the day, and J.P. Bickle felt comfortable in hiring him over Conn Smythe at the time, and for whatever reasons we don't know, and I don't think it had anything to do with their record, because it was a fairly short-lived experiment that person stepped aside, and that's when J.P. Bickle actually hired Conn Smythe. And what people don't know and they fail to realize, he was hired for a position, and the position was the managing partner of the hockey team. He didn't buy the team at that point that everyone reports on. He actually was hired and had a job to do, and that's the position he took as the managing partner, managing director of the team.
So yeah, it's really interesting because like when you go through the book, and it's a great read with Kevin Shea also on board. Jason Wilson was a contribution as well, along with yourself, to tell the story of a guy that really never got his credit due, and he still, to this day, people still hear about it from time to time because there is a memorial award handed out that the Maple Leafs do on an annual basis. I know they've skipped years here and there in between, but a guy that that really never saw the limelight for the most part, but had his hand in basically the structuring of the Maple Leafs franchise as we know it today.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's really what I wanted to bring to light with this is here's a gentleman who had passed away in 1951, had so much to do and got so little, if any, credit. Now, you're right, and you're correct in saying that there's a J.P. Bickle Memorial Award within the Leafs. That's to be given out of the discretion of the board of directors for any player or anyone who's had a good year or done a good turn to the organization. So, for example, Pat Quinn got it in 2003. He was the coach at that time, and he had also been the general manager and a player. So Pat Quinn got it in 2003, which is the last time it was actually awarded or handed out. Now, to go back a little bit, when you look at when J.P. Bickle was the owner, the first gold coin when all the players won the Stanley Cup in, was it 30-31 or 31-32? Can't remember exactly, but when he won that, J.P. Bickle handed out a gold coin to everybody, which was a free pass into the Maple Leaf Gardens at any time. And his name's inscribed on that. Now, that is a tradition. Conn Smythe took that over as a tradition and ended up putting his name on it in years later. But that's another thing that J.P. Bickle started, was this gold coin for everyone as players to have an annual pass if you've won a Stanley Cup with the Maple Leafs.
Well, philanthropy obviously is a huge part of the legacy, Graham, and it's very, very impressive. And again, a lot of people wouldn't know, but certainly when you start talking about sick kids here in Toronto, it's a massive place of where heartfelt feelings because of what they have done in this community. Through his will, it was over $76 million. I believe it's still $2 million a year from the work of J.P. Bickle, the foundation, another $160 million to various charities, including Camp Bickle, which is I guess just east of Timmins, Iroquois Falls, where I think the proceeds of your book is actually going there. So it is a massive part, obviously, for the family to be a part of this kind of philanthropy, including yourself. And to me, that is just it's staggering when you see those kinds of numbers.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And at the end of the day, really I set out to write a book because of his involvement with the Maple Leafs, but I felt that his whole story was so overwhelming and extraordinary that it needed to be told, and especially on the philanthropy part, because as you mentioned, that's still going on today. So from my perspective, this was about honoring one of my family members. It was never about making money as producing or publishing a book. But what I felt I needed to do was pay forward any monies that were forthcoming from the book towards one of his charities or one of his initiatives. And as you mentioned, Camp Bickle's been around since 1939, and
wow.
And at the time he in 49 he had the opportunity to purchase the land, which he did for $5,000, and that's now valued at over $2 million, just from a equity position, but it sees over 600 kids a year, and it's still going strong. And a good friend of mine, a gentleman named Joe Campbell, he's been the proponent of that for over 30 years, and there's been some really good people who have been involved with that over the years, but Joe for the last 30 has kept it going at no benefit to himself, I might add.
Graham, just the comprehension of the research that goes behind a book that the gentleman that you're talking about here was already passed before you were even alive. How hard was it researching something that happened well over 100 years ago, and how trying was that to get the facts straight, or try to kind of figure out the mystery man that nobody really knew about, just because of how he stood and how he would take the step back, and other people would kind of stand ahead of him, even though he was the major factor of why the team was where it was?
Well, in its totality, with Mr. Bickle, he was always the guy behind the scenes, and he was always the guy doing the research. So from my perspective, I wanted to do that research, and all considered, it was about 10 years worth of research, 6 pretty solid to get the information that I needed. And honestly, every time I came across another factoid of his life, I said, this can't be the same guy. And inevitably, it was the same guy every time. So part and parcel, because his story's never been told, because of the depth and the breadth and the number of industry sectors that he affected through the course of his life, it would be pretty hard to keep track of. So it really takes somebody with an interest from a family perspective and historical knowledge of the family to sort of pull that together. And that was really the labor of love here from a family perspective, to be able to pass that on to my children and our family as a whole.
It's funny. It's almost looking at the family tree of the Coppola family. just I don't know if you've ever done. It's just these names keep coming up and versions of it that go into all areas, including auto manufacturing and inventors. Like these are people who were groundbreakers. And I'm looking at JP. So in World War II, he was part of and president of the Victory aircraft that made the Lancaster bombers in Malton. But was he also part of Avro, which eventually comes up with the Avro Arrow? Is it the same thing?
Yes, absolutely. What JP initially did, his really good friend was Lord Beaverbrook, a.k.a. Max Aiken, another Canadian and expat who was in the UK and a really good friend of Winston Churchill's. So Lord Beaverbrook had asked JP if he could get involved in the war effort, which he said, absolutely, let me know where you need me. So he went over to the UK and he actually created the ATFARO, which is the Atlantic Ferrying Organization. So they were starting to produce a number of planes and aircraft, but they needed to get them to where they needed to be. So he coordinated all the pilots and the logistics to get the planes where they needed to be. After he built that up within 18 months, he came back to Canada. They took over National Steel Car to make it Victory Aircraft, and he started, as the president, producing the Lancaster bomber at one a day, which Winston Churchill greatly said contributed to the winning of the war and the Battle of Britain for sure.
That is,
yes.
Yep.
After Victory Aircraft was over, after the war was over, everyone set down their tools and walked away, and there was a lot of jobs and a lot of real intellectual property that we still had in Canada. So what happened was J.P. Bickle, with the help of A.V. Rowe's company over in the UK, he personally founded with his own money and signed a $2.5 million note at the Bank of Commerce to establish A.V. Rowe Canada Limited. So he was actually the chairman of Avro from inception until his death in August 51.
Unbelievable story. It truly is. It's really, we talk about, what makes, Canada great. That would be J.P. Bickle. I mean, these are the kinds of stories that I think people don't know. So I think it's just fantastic, Graham, that you've written this book. But here's the real bombshell of a question. I mean, you ready for this one? Because as you know, hard-hitting show I have. Very difficult.
Sure, I know.
Very difficult.
I know your reputation.
So, Graham, are you a Leaf fan? Can you say that publicly as someone whose family went out to Saskatchewan and now you're in Alberta? Are you a Leaf fan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with the family connection, you have to be.
Yeah.
I was initially as a young child because in the middle of Saskatchewan we had two channels. English was one and French was the other, so you know the team I cheered for. But when Harold Ballard traded Lanny McDonald, I was so mad I swore I would never cheer for the Toronto Maple Leafs again. Until I started doing all my research on J.P. Bickle, I thought, well, maybe I better give them a second chance now, and Mr. Ballard's passed. And we've got this great family connection. So I really wanted to bring that to light. I really wanted to make the Leafs look back at their history. The Montreal Canadiens have done such a good job of their history, and with their 100th anniversary of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and I know my good friends, Kevin Shea, as you know, great writer, one of the writers of record for the Toronto Maple Leafs and hockey and history in general. Jason Wilson, incredible man, got his doctorate in Canadian literature and history. Those two wrote the book on the 100th anniversary of the Maple Leafs, and I thought, who would be better partners to have write this book as a point of fact and record for the Toronto Maple Leafs than those two gentlemen? So I was glad that they joined me in this quest. But you're right, and so I am a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, and I am also a Calgary Flames fan because we live in Calgary.
Yeah, I see you lob that one at the end. Yeah, I see what happened there. Graham, wonderful job. It's a fantastic book, and I think for any Leaf fan, and quite frankly, it sort of transcends just being a Leaf fan or a sports fan. This is a real piece of history.
Yeah, this is Canadiana.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So it's a fabulous book, and as you said, you mentioned teaming up with Kevin Shea, who's one of the really great human beings that I've certainly met, and what he does with even the road hockey cures cancer. He's just one of those kinds of people, and he's a historian to himself to a degree. So I thank you so much for coming on the show today. It's been a real pleasure. Best of luck with the book, and maybe we'll have you back for Robbie Burns Day. Would that be all right with you?
Yeah, Graham Douglas McLaughlin, happy to participate in that with you.
Take care, Graham. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Graham.
Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Great job. That was awesome. As Jim Rome would say, that was a great interview. I know you're expecting something different, and you may have wanted to hear about the great Leafs of the time, but I'll tell you what, that was a great piece of history, and that was a great call.
Yep.
Rack 'em.
J.P. Bickle, the life, the legacy, and the life, the Leafs, and the legacy. Definitely recommend it. It's it's a very strong read as far as just everything. And it's funny he mentions that because when he's doing the research and he's figuring out things that happened over a century ago, this guy had his fingers in so many different aspects of Canada. Like we didn't even get a chance, Mike, during that conversation, and he played such a significant role in it. We didn't even get a chance talking about him founding Canadian famous players theaters.
Yeah, I mean,
you know those famous this is the guy that actually had founded it.
Yeah, and you just heard Churchill, and look, if you want to see a cool movie too, go see Darkest Hour.
Okay.
So that's Gary Oldman playing Winston Churchill, and he's got to be up for an Academy Award, I would think, for it because it's an unbelievable performance. And it just there's lately if you go to Netflix, there's The Crown. There's a lot of these shows that are based on sort of the royals, and not in the way that I've always hated it, which is what do they have for dinner, how much is their jewelry. Like I don't care about that stuff, but the actual history of the families. When you watch Darkest Hour, you realize how close, and certainly of our generation, because it's so much before we were alive, understanding that fine line between where Hitler was going to be stopped or he was going to continue on in world domination. And there is Winston Churchill on the phone to Roosevelt saying, "But do you have any planes, perhaps? A tank?" Like they were running out. They didn't have anything.
Right.
They didn't have anything. So guys like J.P. Bickle and coming up with a plane a day may have changed the history of the modern world as we know it. That's not overstating it. It is not overstating it. So to me, what a great book. And there's some times where people say, "What's a great sports book?" This is just a great book. So we appreciate that. You're watching Raw Mike Richards either on the website or the dedicated YouTube channel. Thanks, by the way, for subscribing. Continue to do it. It's that little button down there. Just hit it. The more, the merrier. We would like to hit a significant number at some point as people find us, because I know sometimes it's not the easiest thing to find, but it is a huge help if you subscribe. If you watch us, we want to see that number grow, so we appreciate that. And what helps numbers grow, Dave?
Tell me more.
Really horrific, bad boxing moments. And because now I'm all obsessed, if you've seen the last couple of days, I'm finding these terrible moments in either boxing, Muay Thai, you've seen Mexican wrestling. Here's a beauty. This one is from, does it say what year this is? It looks like it's the 80s. Maybe it's even the late 70s. It could even be the late 70s. Now, here's what's really cool about this. The late Don Chevrier is actually, as he did boxing. This is from ESPN years ago, and the gentleman's name, who you're going to really be watching in this clip, is Edward Rackley. Is it Rackley or Rackley? It's Rackley. This is maybe one of the worst boxing performances of all time. He's facing a guy who was a former amateur national caliber boxer, including medals. He's on the Olympic team. So he picks this guy to go up against, and I've never seen a boxing style like it, and I don't believe there's been a boxing style since.
Olympic prospects, the amateur team. He fought internationally 21 times, but he gave it all up to turn pro. And as somebody said, you certainly can't eat medals and trophies.
Oh, Don.
His professional boxing record is 1 win and 2 defeats. Edward Rackley.
Watch what he does. Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
His opponent, coming out of the blue corner, weighing in at 138 1/2 pounds, wearing red trunks with a white trim.
Yeah, who do you think is going to win, even if you didn't know what the records were?
Through his first 2 professional bouts, both by knockouts.
Ooch.
Cedric Rose.
Watch.
Rose, the young man, I love the line by a writer in Biloxi, Mississippi, when he defeated an East German there while fighting for the United States last November. He's a very mild-mannered young man, Rose is, and he called him the Mellow Rose of Texas. Oh. And here he is in his 3rd professional fight against Rackley. Into just his 4th.
Oh, yeah, watch this. Watch
Round
the style.
1, it is scheduled for 6, and while that may not sound like a very long bout, it is for a man who's fought all his career as an amateur and ended his first 2 professional fights before the end of the 3rd round, and that's what Cedric Rose did.
In the white.
And we had Cedric
They're all undercuts.
His second pro fight in one of those knockouts against not a great opposition, as it doesn't look like
Rackley. Rackley walked into that and went down briefly, and will take the count of 8 from the referee, Dickie Cole.
Now, that Rose fight I alluded to was in Lake Charles, Louisiana, one of our favorite stops in ESPN.
There's one.
Right now, it looks to me like he's going to do away with Edward Rackley as quickly as he has his other opponents.
Rackley keeps on coming with those long arms. You talk about throwing a punch from Australia. He's throwing his from some other planet I don't know.
Edward Rackley is not the most stylish fighter we've ever seen here on ESPN. I think we can say that.
He's down again. That'll be the second count, and that'll be enough for the referee, Dickie Cole. He has seen enough. Rackley is taken out by Cedric Rose, who ends it very, very early. And Cedric Rose, all the class certainly in the ring between those two.
Read between the lines. Don Chevy saying, that guy's shit. We'll be back after this.
And now a message from our sponsor.
Yeah. Now a message from Marlboro Cigarettes. The cigarettes the kids enjoy. Oh, that was, and that's the one thing that I truly miss, Dave, is
cigarettes?
No, but I could smoke if I wanted to, I think. Could you?
Smoke them if
Did
you
you ever
got 'em.
smoke?
No.
Did you ever smoke?
No, never.
Oh, so if you're in a bar and as a kid.
No. Cigars, I've tried.
Cigars. I'm a cigar.
Yeah.
I'm a cigar smoker,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't somewhere?
I used to DJ in clubs that had smoke.
Yeah. That was a nice smell.
These lungs probably aren't as healthy as I think they are, so I got to be careful with, as the age goes by because of all that secondhand garbage. You know what I mean? So, and the worst part too is you come home because the family, nobody smokes in the family. You come home, you take off the clothes and throw them outside the room, and the next day it's like, oh, good God, that's what I was in the entire night.
Did you ever see a girl that smoked?
Yeah, that was terrible.
That's a tough one.
The kissing part is.
It's really tough.
Yeah, it's. I love
we still did it. I mean, still, stuff was going on.
but realistically, how many people do you know today that smoke compared to the people you used to? Yeah,
hardly any.
Well, exactly.
Hardly any.
Like I played junior hockey with a Greek goaltender that would smoke in between periods.
Yeah, I mean in the day. Yeah,
seriously, he'd go to the shower and he'd sit there and he'd pace back and forth and was
he any good?
He was actually pretty good. John
Really?
Sarantidis.
Sarantidis.
Yeah, very good goaltender. But he's like, I distinctly remember once we're sitting there and I walk into the washroom in an intermission and he's sitting there going, Dave, they're peppering me. Dave, the pepper. I'm like, John, settle down,
Pepper, like smoked paprika, like you would put on the potatoes, the roasted potatoes.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier on about the I think terrible decision to even attempt putting Isaiah Thomas from Cleveland in front of Paul Pierce. I really hope that when they take a look at this Houston Rockets LA Clippers game, they just keep in mind. And I know Chris Paul has that relationship. He's like an ambassador, or whatever you want to call it, with the league. Then you've got to set some sort of example for his team going into a locker room. I think there's going to be a real severity. So from Adam Silver, this is one where I think look, you know what David Stern would do. Stern acted like his name. Stern would come down. It didn't matter who you were. David Stern, I thought, was a very good commissioner and took them out of a very bad time that the NBA was going through when he took reins. It did not look like the NBA we see now. David Stern was a big reason for that. So we'll see Adam Silver, who looks like, well, I'll be honest, recess couldn't have been fun.
He had that look.
Oh, I don't know if he went to a school that even had a football team, but if they did, they're rolling him in the mud and chanting his name.
I got a feeling his parents probably own the football team.
Yeah, I was going to say it may not have been, but I'll tell you what. He seems like he has all the right credentials, but he's got to come down on these guys. And I think they're saying that Ariza was the one that sort of was inciting this. So, Dave, to me, when I look at this kind of garbage, because this is the way the NBA was perceived before, a league filled full of punks. You have to remember, before look at Magic and Larry Bird.
Yep.
Literally saved this league. I mean, they used to play in the day on television the NBA championship on tape delay.
Oof.
Wasn't even live. Like, you can't even imagine that now, but that's how it was. It's like, oh, and by the way, here's a bunch. It was seen as pot smoking, like just really kind of semi-shady until they straighten it up. Larry Bird, Magic Johnson comes in, kind of saved the league. Stern comes in and really sort of cleans house. So for Adam Silver, if he's come from that sort of lineage, which, of course, he was very tight with David Stern, that's why he got the job, let's just see how he comes down on these guys, because I think he really has to. If he doesn't, then what can you not do, Dave? If you can go into guys' dressing rooms after the game, What's
Exactly.
parking lot stuff now?
Exactly.
Like seriously, I think they really do.
I think it's going to be massive, and you know what? Both ownership groups will be fined as well. So we could be seeing up to 6-7 players plus ownerships.
I think so, and I think it would be the right call.
It's going to be big money.
Otherwise, it's going to turn into roller derby. Oh, that's right. If you remember roller derby, Paul the Bear Rupert.
You got it.
Skinny Minnie Miller. Actually, he shows up in this one. What's this match between? Does it say the actual names there, roast beef? Because people need to know.
The Philadelphia Warriors versus the Canadian Braves.
Oh, yeah. So there's some great action, including, and this is nice, so because there's a black guy whose his name is Richard, he becomes Little Richard. But watch at the end. Watch it, a very particular sneaky performance in the wild world of roller derby.
All right, the pack getting in tag now. As we mentioned, Little Richard now, the jammer here, number 66.
Nice.
That old familiar number 66. Very much upset. Charles and Lambert reneged. They were to be Cowboys for this particular game. All right, there's big, tall Peter Kelly, and Little Richard takes care of Kelly.
Oh, my goodness.
Little Richard on the move right now, the lead jammer. Now let's see how Richard will fare. Richard, well, a lot of people saying we must agree that he's got to be one of the fastest on a bank track today.
I've always heard
Richard
that.
now up to double trouble. Arnold Schoen and Peter Kelly defending. There's Little Richard. He's got his job cut out for him. Now Kelly and Schoen defending here.
Tremendous
running
action.
out in a jam. Richard trying to get by. Can he do it?
Now watch this.
Little Richard Brown. He's up and look at Rupert.
Paul
the Bear Rupert.
Oh boy.
knocking
Now
down
watch what
Richard.
happens.
And look at little Leroy. Twirls his little sidekick. Going over to Richard with that briefcase. Now they call the play off, and that was Little Leroy.
Little Leroy, his little sidekick. I'm telling you, folks, I didn't make this up.
Good title.
Don't look at me.
Good title.
Don't look at me. Don't be mad at me. I've done nothing wrong here, Dave.
I know we're about to break, but I want to get this in here. Some breaking news off of the desk.
Is it about Little Leroy?
No, it's close though. Little Jonathan Bernier and the Colorado Avalanche come to Toronto on the 22nd, so that's this coming Monday. Video tribute happening for Jonathan Bernier.
Oh,
so
yeah,
we,
of course there would
look
be.
forward to that.
Yeah.
Because he was here for countless years of superior goaltending, and
I'll watch it if his wife's in it.
good friends with Nelson Mandela, who
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
That's the worst story ever.
That's a
the
story.
worst
I still
story
don't know if he goes, I don't know what that said. Yeah, it's like saying the Titanic made a tremendous recovery. Well, who was it who said we got to be like the Titanic? Was it Kevin Durant? Who was that?
It was somebody.
It was like, we got to be like the Titanic. Do you know how the story ended?
No, you don't. No, that's not good.
And it was Celine Dion pumping her chest, and then the chunky white girl, and Leonardo DiCaprio as a frozen head at the end of it.
That's right. Poor Leo.
Poor Leo.
Whatever happened to him?
Yeah. He also invented something called the frozen head.
Oh, he did.
Oh, come on.
I
Look at
did
this.
not know
It's supposed to hit the there's the this guy. Yeah. See that? What? Don't do
The
that.
Jonathan Bernier of
Yeah.
computers,
Yeah.
right there. Garbage. Just saying.
What if Mandela invented the computer? Wow, that was an interesting show. You know, I really don't like computers. I gotta be honest. It's just,
I've noticed that.
but it's. I get it, nerds. You rule the world. Look what I'm on. We're on the internet now. Well, for now. What? What's going on? What are you saying? I'd like to thank Graham McLaughlin for his great book. I can't believe it's not free. Story of J.P. Bickle. That to me was an unbelievable story.
Awesome, yeah. And Kevin actually just sent me a note thanking us for everything, and he's going to get Kevin Shea on the show with us in studio next week.
Very well done. And thanks to people in Thailand, midgets, and Little Leroy. Stay strong. Stay strong.